Hi, everyone. Welcome to Frankly Speaking About Cancer. What do I tell the kids? My name is Kelly Kraft. I'm one of the program managers at Gilda's Club Quad Cities. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I coordinate all of our kids programs. So just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions throughout this, feel free to chat them in through Facebook Live, and our program director who's on will come on and ask those questions. To get us started, just to kind of give you a little bit of idea of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Gilda's Club Quad Cities and what we do for anyone impacted by cancer and what we do with our kids programs. And then I'm going to talk about what different kids of different ages maybe understand about cancer and what behaviors they might exhibit if cancer is in the household. And then discuss just talking to kids about cancer and what that might look like. And then tips for answering some of those hard questions that kids might have when you're having a conversation about cancer. And then different ways you can help your child through that time of cancer being in the household. And then we'll just take any questions that are around, and then I'll share some resources with you. So just a little bit of information about Gilda's Club Quad Cities. So we're a cancer support community, and everything that we do is 100% free. So we have all kinds of social and emotional programs for anyone impacted by cancer. So that's the person with the diagnosis, that is the adult family members and friends, that's the kids and the caregivers, anyone who cancer has impacted their lives. And we have all kinds of things like support groups, social programs, kids programs, educational workshops like this one, and healthy lifestyle activities. So yoga, meditation, essential oils, things like that. In our kids program specifically, we have all kinds of things to help kids make sure they're not going through cancer alone. So we have our noogie night. So that's our social time for kids to just hang out with other kids who are going through a similar situation, in our teen time, just that social time where kids can connect. And we also have a more structured activity-based support group piece called Kid Support that I use with the older kids who have cancer in their family. We also have Grief Busters for kids who've lost someone to cancer and all kinds of things like that. We are also taking applications right now for our Camp Genesis. So that's a week-long camp, overnight camp at Camp Shalom in Maquoketa, June 21st through 26th this year. So you can find all that info on our website, gildasclubqc.org/camp. And it's a whole week where kids get to just be kids and be out at camp. And especially if they were, pent up at home right now during all this social distancing, it's in the middle of June. So they can get out, get all that energy out that they've been holding back, and also talk about cancer some. They'll have groups every day with me, and they even get to take a field trip to the Genesis Cancer Care Institute at Genesis West and see all the cool radiation machines and learn from the doctors and nurses. So if anybody's interested, we're taking applications for that right now. So let's also talk about some cancer support community resources. So these are some things that our headquarters has for us, which is amazing. So one thing I really want to talk about is our cancer support helpline. So that's 888-793-9355. And that's staffed by licensed professional counselors and resource specialists. And they've actually even added some extra hours right now, which I listed on the PowerPoint screen. So it's open Monday through Friday, 8 to 8 Central Time. And then it's also open on Saturdays and Sundays, adding since people are having extra anxiety, people are in their house, and there's a lot of things going on right now, just to add that little extra support during the weekend. So Saturday and Sunday, 8 to 4 Central Time. So Open Options is a really awesome program where it's one of our one-on-one programs, where if somebody is facing a fork in the road in their treatment decision, so maybe they're going to do, there are some, pros and cons to doing this treatment, or there's some pros and cons of doing this other treatment, and they're trying to decide what to do, they can sit one-on-one with one of our social workers and talk about their life goals and their treatment goals. And really get a kind of a curated one-page list to bring to their doctor's appointment to make sure that they get their questions answered. And then frankly speaking about cancer, that's what we're doing right now. So we love to bring in doctors and nurses and social workers and different types of people who are experts in their field to talk about different types of cancer and different things that people who are living with cancer need information about. So let's get into what do I tell the kids. So first I'm going to talk about different kids' ages and what they might understand about cancer at that age and different behaviors that they might exhibit. I think this is a really cool quote and a really important quote. So I'm going to say it out loud. I feel things need to be approached differently for different kids and personalities. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing, even with siblings. Kids should not be forced to act, feel, etc. a certain way. So I think that's kind of the takeaway from this is all kids are different. You are the expert on your own family and your own child. And so trust your gut. You know your kid the best and you know how to talk to them, but we're going to give you some tips to help you along the way. So infancy and toddlerhood, so that's 0 to 2 years, those kids aren't going to understand anything about cancer. They probably don't know the word, but they are able to sense changes in routine. So if mom, dad, grandma, grandpa are gone a little bit extra, you know, we're going to the hospital or to doctor's appointments more, they're going to sense that. And they're also aware of changes in our behavior and the feelings of those around them. So if people are more anxious or, you know, not feeling well, they're going to pick up on that. And so some behaviors that they might exhibit because of noticing those changes are tantrums and changes in eating and sleeping. So maybe if you have, you know, a 1-year-old who's been sleeping through the night, maybe they're going to have a little bit harder time sleeping right now, or maybe need a little more sleep. And they might have some separation anxiety, so some of that clinginess. But that's all, you know, these changes are understandable and normal, but just so that you would know what behaviors you might see from your child if cancer's in the family. When it comes to
just a real quick audio check here. If those who are joining us via Facebook Live could do a quick thumbs up, make sure we can hear you. That'd be great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kelly. And so preschool, so that 3 through 5 years, kids will have some understanding of simple illness. So colds and flus, they've probably been sick at this point. They know what that feels like, but they don't have a whole lot of understanding of a serious illness because, you know, most of them won't have experienced that before. So they don't a lot of times know the difference between them. They might know some, but they don't know everything. And one thing that we have to keep track of for preschoolers and school age kids is magical thinking. So sometimes kids just don't understand the cause of cancer and they think that they can do something that can cause cancer. So say mom or dad have cancer, they might think that, oh, well, I've been giving mom a hard time with bedtime recently and I've been not wanting to go to bed and that's probably made her tired, which made her have cancer. And so that's something that we need to combat with them as we go along. And so some common behaviors and feelings are regression. So they might act younger than they did. Maybe if they're potty trained, they might be wetting the bed. Or bursts of emotion. I mean, adults have these when cancer's in the family, so it's understandable that our kids do too. And then they might repeat questions, especially cancer-specific questions. They just need that, that knowledge that things are going to be okay and that understanding. They might ask over and over again. And they will also have separation anxiety, so that neediness and clinginess. And they might play or act out themes related to illness, so like doctor's visits and things like that. And so school age kids, so this elementary school, 6 to 8 years, kids usually do understand the difference between a simple and serious illness. At this point, they might have learned a little bit about some of those illnesses in school, but there's also some misinformation that we'll always have to combat. At this point, kids are developing friendships. They're talking about things at school that they might not bring back home and tell you. So you want to make sure that you're checking in with your little one every so often to make sure that if there is any misinformation, you can correct it. And then also still that magical thinking, that's definitely still a thing at this age. Just maybe, you know, mom and I haven't been getting along a lot and I said some really mean things, and that gave her cancer. And so again, just always reminding them that it's not their fault and that there's nothing that they could have done to cause cancer. And so common behaviors and feelings, a lot of these are similar to the preschool age, but that regression again, maybe acting a little bit younger than they were before. Worry and fear really start setting in here. They understand the difference between those simple and serious illnesses, so they understand the severity of the situation and might scare them. And again, those repeated questions, needing to understand everything, and still that separation anxiety and playing and acting out things related to illness. And then if their routine gets disrupted, they might become angry. I mean, as adults, we get upset when our routines get disrupted. So if they're not able to go to soccer practice or to a friend's house when they normally would, or have a friend over to their house because mom, dad, sister, brother aren't feeling well, that might make them upset. It's an understandable feeling, but it's just something you might see. And then maybe distancing themselves. And that's something that you need to take note of if that's happening, so that you can reach out and get them some help. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, just chat them in via Facebook Live and we'll get them answered for you. So middle school age, that 9 to 12 years, they often have a basic understanding of cancer. A lot of times they will have talked about it in school. They've watched movies where somebody's had cancer. It's been talked about around them and they know the basic idea of it. But there still might be misinformation. Even adults sometimes have misinformation. So it's something that we always have to be checking in with those kids and teens about, is making sure we kind of know what they know so we can correct anything that's incorrect. And still magical thinking, a lot of kids at this age have grown out of some of that, but even if they know to an extent that they didn't cause it, there still might be an underlying worry that they caused it. And so always combating that. And so again, some common behaviors and feelings, they might be hiding their feelings. They might feel like they have to be the strong one in the family and they don't want to make things harder on the person with cancer. And so they might hide those feelings. So it's always good to check in and make sure they know that all their feelings are valid and you want to hear those feelings. Again, that worry and fear, that's every age, you know, even adults are going to have worries and fears when it comes to cancer. Once again, that anger if their routine is disrupted, if they can't, again, go to a friend's house or go to a friend's birthday party or something like that. They might express fear and sadness as anger because they just don't understand what's going on. You know, they don't know how to express it a different way, so it might come out as anger. And they might experience some embarrassment. Their family is a little bit different than their friends' families. They're having, you know, to deal with their routines being different, and maybe mom or dad or grandma or grandpa lost their hair and they don't know how to tell their friends about it. So things like that, just things that we always have to check up with these kids on. And so teens, their understanding, they do understand cancer. Usually they've seen movies, they've talked to people, they've learned about it in classes. There's always a possibility of misinformation still. This is when teens are getting really into social media. So we need to make sure that teens are getting their information from credible sources. So making sure that we're kind of following what they're following on social media and checking in with them about what they understand about cancer, so that if there's anything incorrect in there, we can correct it. And they're thinking more about life and death and the meaning of life. So they're getting more into those more intense thoughts and how is this going to affect me and my family going forward, and worrying about their loved ones dying. So those are hard things to deal with, but it's something that a teen's going to be thinking about. So some common behaviors are, and this is with all teens, but it's especially difficult to navigate with a family that's been impacted by cancer. So the independence versus staying close to the family unit. Every teen goes through this stage where they're starting to drift from their family unit being their main form of comfort and friendship to their friends. And straying more toward wanting to be with friends more often than their immediate family unit. And so that's extra hard for a kid whose maybe parent or grandparent or someone close to them has cancer, because they still want to have those friendships, but they might be worried that the person with cancer would take it personally or that they have to be around. So making sure that you're fostering those friendships and also fostering that home life, making sure it's a good balance. And they might get angry if their routine is disrupted. They might not be able to go to, a friend's sleepover or have a sleepover at their house when maybe they've gone to a bunch of sleepovers at friends' houses and they would normally have one, at home. But since mom is or dad is immunocompromised, they don't want to have a bunch of teens in the house. And they might get upset about that, and that's understandable. They might also, again, try to hide their feelings, especially a lot of times teens are doing that to some extent anyway. It's especially hard if they're worried about somebody in their family and they don't want to upset that person or feel like they're putting more on that person, when as parents, we want to know those feelings, but they might not want to give them up. And then taking out frustration and anger on family. The family is the ones, the people that are closest to the teens, and the ones enforcing rules and routines. And so any anger and frustration might be taken out on the family because they're the ones that are closest. I really like this quote, just talking about cancer. My children would rather I communicate openly than to leave it to the imagination. While imagination is great, in this case, knowing the bad results that cancer can lead to, they would rather have the knowledge. So I think that's important when talking to kids about cancer, is we don't want to leave a whole lot to the imagination, because the imagination go to a scary place when it comes to cancer. So we really want them to have the knowledge and the understanding of what's going on, what cancer is, and what's going to happen. So when you're going to have a talk with a kid about cancer, so maybe there's a new diagnosis in the family, and there have been a few doctor's appointments, we've decided a treatment course, and now we've got to tell the kid about what's going on. So the first step is preparing yourself for that conversation in a few ways. So first, you want to make sure you have all the information yourself, because kids are going to have questions. So you want to make sure you have all the information that they're going to need, and maybe think about some of the questions that they might come up with so you have some answers ready for those. And then also prepare yourself kind of mentally and emotionally too, because we might think that the kid is going to have a really emotional reaction, but they might actually just be quiet. We might be having, as parents, the emotional reaction. And the kid might just be quiet and listening and just taking it in. And so we need to be prepared for how they'll react and how we might react as the adults. And then make sure we're timing the conversation as best as we can. Sometimes we don't have a whole lot of control over that, but when we do, it's best to not have that conversation when kids are going to be sleepy or when they're going to be hungry or, before something stressful. And another piece of that is timing it in a way that works for them in their way of communicating. So some kids really like being face-to-face and having eye contact, and some kids don't. Some kids are going to look down at the table, but they might feel like they're not supposed to look down at the table because this is a really important conversation. So if you have a kid that you don't want to kind of make them feel like they have to have direct eye contact with you, having that conversation sometimes on a long car ride can really be helpful. So maybe timing it, coming up with a reason to maybe go a little bit farther out of your way so that you can have that conversation in the car where they don't feel pushed into having that direct eye contact with you, and just letting them kind of take the information. Making sure we're using the right language when it comes to cancer. So you always want to use the word cancer when talking about cancer, because we don't want the kid to think it's something else. And use the terms that are coming up in your treatment course to use the word chemotherapy or the word surgery or the word radiation. those are tools for them so that when they hear about the medication or whatever it might be, they can put it back toward that word. That's in their toolbox if you give them those words. And then physical presence. Sometimes, these conversations are a lot shorter than we think they're going to be. We think they're going to be these long drawn out things, but kids kind of just go, okay. Some kids might have a bunch of questions, and some kids might just go, okay, and then walk away. And so we wanted to make sure that we're physically present with them throughout that conversation and before and after, just because we had this conversation and, it's hard news doesn't mean that I'm not going to be around. We're still going to read books. We're still going to do activities together. And some key points to make sure that we bring into these conversations are that it's not their fault. There's nothing that these kids could have done to stop cancer. There's nothing they did that caused the cancer. That's something we want to, remind them as we go on. It's not just a one-time thing, and that it's not contagious. That is a big piece of misinformation that kids, even teens, sometimes have, that even if mom or dad or sister, brother, grandma, grandpa have cancer, you can hug them, you can share their food, all the normal things that you would want to do. Now is not the time for them to feel like they can't be close to that person. So want to make sure we're reminding them that they cannot catch it from the person who has cancer. And reminding them that any question is okay, even if it's a question that they think the parent doesn't want to hear. Those questions about death and things like that, that all questions are okay. No questions silly, that you want to answer questions. You want to hear what they're thinking about. And to always have open communication. So once this first conversation is over, that's just a first conversation. You want to make sure that they understand that they can come to you with any questions at any time, and that you want to know what they're thinking. You want to know what they're feeling, and that they, you don't have to wait for a conversation to come up. They can talk to you anytime, but also checking in with them every so often, because sometimes kids know that cancer is a hard topic, and they know that cancer makes people sad. And so sometimes they might not want to be the one to bring up a conversation about cancer. So if you open up a conversation and just check in and say, how are you doing? These are the updates. We had a recent doctor's appointment. This is what's going on. How are you feeling about everything? Making sure that you're checking in with them so that they have an opening to talk about it. So some common questions that kids have, and I'll give you some tips for answering them. Of course, these are all dependent on the kid's age and their personality. Again, you're the expert on your own kids, so trust your gut, but here are some tips. So what is cancer? So making sure we're giving them, some basic information. So depending on the age of the child, you can say it's a disease, it's an illness. As they get older, you can start talking about the body is made up of cells and cancer's disease of the cell, things like that. And as if it's, age appropriate, figuring out how, talking to them about the body part that the cancer is in and how that might affect the person. Like if it's lung cancer, how it might feel for the parent, and just giving them information that they will understand. And then one big question, can I catch cancer? Always needing to remind kids that cancer is not contagious. Sometimes kids will worry about it and they don't want to get cancer themselves, and they don't want to make anything worse. And so reminding them it's not contagious, and now is not the time to change anything up. Like, you want to be close to mom or dad? Absolutely. Let's sit together and read a book. And then talking about those different treatments. So they might, if the family member or friend is getting chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery, they might not know what that is. And so again, depending on their age and their level of understanding, talking about what chemotherapy is, and maybe saying it's a medicine that attacks the cancer cells. And on the same situation, talking about what side effects the parent and the kid might see. So specifically for chemotherapy, there's the issue of hair loss. And so talking to the kid about what kinds of things they might see, like they might see mom's hair fall out, you know, that mom may lose her hair, or that she might be extra tired, or that she might not feel very good, and things that they can, you know, help with, and just so that they're not surprised, just as the person with the diagnosis doctor will tell them the side effects that the person might see, so that they're not surprised when they happen. The kid should get that same treatment so that they're not surprised if that's what's going on. When it comes to hair loss, why are you losing your hair? Talking about how chemotherapy is such a strong drug, it's such a strong medicine, that sometimes, depending on age again, that it's so good at attacking those cancer cells, but sometimes it doesn't know the difference between the cancer cells and some of our regular healthy cells. And so it attacks those too, like our hair cells. And so our hair falls out, but that all of those things are temporary. And when it comes to losing hair, it's something that some kids do just fine with, and some kids don't do fine with. Some kids, it can really shake them. So it's just something to make sure we're addressing and letting the kid know that it might happen, giving them a little bit of that control back too, of knowing that it might happen, and talking to them about your decisions with it too, because some people decide to shave their head when they know they're going to lose their hair, when they start losing their hair. And so talking to the kid about that, of like, you know, mom's thinking about shaving your head. Do you want to be there when I do it, or do you not? And giving them a little bit of that control back, so that they have, I mean, cancer's taking away a lot of their control and a lot of what they're used to. And so giving them a little bit of that power back helps. And here's the big scary question. Do people with cancer die? Are you going to die? What's going to happen? So that's a really common question for kids. They know of cancer. They've seen movies and read books where people with cancer die, or they might know somebody who died of cancer. And so that's a really common question. It's a tough one, but being honest is usually the best bet. Sometimes people with cancer do die, and letting them know where you are on your, with your treatment. So this is different family to family, but saying things like, sometimes people with cancer do die, but mom, dad, that's why we're going to the doctor so often. They're doing this and this to try to combat that cancer. And right now, the doctors think that the medicine is working and that it's going to work. But if anything changes, I will let you know. And giving the kid updates if anything does change. And then the question of, can I talk about cancer with other people? So that's a family specific question. Some families are open about it. They don't mind talking to anybody about their cancer experience, but some families are a little bit more closed off. They don't want to tell a bunch of other people about it. And so that's a family decision. But if you're a family that doesn't want to tell a whole lot of people about it, we suggest giving them, some people that they can talk to outside of the immediate family unit. So maybe a teacher, guidance counselor, a friend or a family friend, adult family friend that they can talk to about it, just so that they have other outlets other than just the immediate family. And then some ways to help your child through all this. Again, that open communication, reminding them that this conversation isn't just one and done, that they can talk to you whenever they need to talk to you, and checking in with them. And then sharing and validating feelings. So letting them know how you're feeling. So maybe you're not feeling very good, and maybe you're a little scared. And if you can say that you're a little scared, it lets them know that it's okay to feel a little scared. And validating feelings. So trying not to say things like, don't cry, it's going to be okay. Saying things like, it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel sad right now, or to be scared, but let's talk about that. How are you feeling? And also, on the same vein of validating feelings, reminding them that it's okay to be happy sometimes. Sometimes kids think that if cancer's in their family and they're dealing with this big scary thing, that they can't have fun, good days, and they can't laugh and smile, when that's, you know, obviously something that we want them to do. And so they can do things like go to camp and have a great time. And it's okay to share those happy feelings with the person with cancer too. And maintain routine as much as we can. Of course, some things are going to change when cancer is in the family. There are going to be routines that have to change, more doctor's appointments and maybe different childcare situations, but trying to keep things as regular as is possible. Kids thrive on stability and routine. So being able to keep as many of those as we can. And then sticking to rules. It's really easy when cancer's in the family, this big bad thing, to say, you know what, bedtime doesn't really matter. Trying to make up for some of the bad that's going on, the hard things, by bending the rules. But we put those rules there to keep our kids safe and give them stability. And so now is the time to keep to those versus letting them slide. And then allow kids to help. So that again gives kids some of that power back of just something they can do. You know, maybe teaching the kids to make a meal that tastes okay to the person who's getting the cancer treatment. So maybe things aren't tasting normal, but there's one thing that they eat and they love it and it tastes like it's supposed to taste, and helping the kid maybe know how to make that. So they can do something. They feel like there's something that they can do about this whole situation, giving them some of that power back. But also keeping in check, making sure we're not putting too much on the kids, especially like teens and watching younger siblings and helping around the house. So of course we want to let them help, and sometimes you might need their help. But making sure that we're allowing our kids and teens to be kids and teens to the extent that we can, and checking in with them to make sure we're not putting too much on them. And then connect with your child's school. There are helping professionals there that can be on your side. So that's their counselors, that's their teachers. If they know what's going on at home, they can make sure that they're checking in with that kid and giving them resources that they need. And also that's a tool in your toolbox, because if they know what's going on, they can be watching for any change in behavior and report back to you so that you kind of know what's going on. It works both ways. So just when to seek out outside support. So of course, places like Gilda's Club Quad Cities are there for you and your family through the whole process. So before you even see any of these types of behavior changes, you can always come to Gilda's Club just because you want to connect with people. But of course, if you're seeing some of these behavior changes, absolutely reach out to a professional or someone in your child's school. Just making sure we're getting that kid the support they need, however that is. So if you see extreme changes in behavior, that's definitely something you need to reach out for outside support. If they're becoming isolated, if they're having difficulty at school, losing interest in activities, that's time to connect with school. That's time to maybe get them into counseling, get them the support that they need. And the big red flag, of course, the desire to hurt themselves or someone else, you need to get immediate support. So that's calling their pediatrician, that's calling local mental health professional and hospital, trying to get them immediate support, because we don't want any kid hurting themselves or someone else. So this, Frankly Speaking About Cancer program comes with Frankly Speaking About Cancer book. We do have some available, but they're also available online. The link is on this page, and you can find on the Cancer Support Community site all kinds of books and PDFs like this that you can go through. There are ones on different types of cancer, and this one specifically has a lot of the information that I went through here. I know it was a lot in a short amount of time, so that you could go through it again on your own time. And then there's also just a couple other little resources. Here's a video. It's kind of a quick guide on how to talk to kids about cancer. It's only like 5 minutes. There's a link there if you'd like to watch that. And then Cancer Support Community has a weekly radio show where they talk about different topics. And one of them was called My Parent Has Cancer and It Really Sucks. So that's another option, just another thing that you can check out if you have time. And here are just some other resources for you. Cancer Support Community is, of course, a big one. Camp Kessem's on here. We also have our Camp Genesis coming up that we're taking applications for, and just some other options that you can look through when you have time. And just to share some other resources that our headquarters has and that we love, our Cancer Experience Registry is really neat. It's kind of a survey for a person with cancer or someone caring for someone with cancer, and it gets a lot of information, and that information is used to provide education and support in how we know to do programs like this, and can also be used when advocates go out and try to help with policy change. And adding more into that, if you're somebody who's interested in advocacy, so trying to, you know, have those laws and policies help people living with cancer and their loved ones. Sometimes people think that it's a big thing to be an advocate. You have to do big, scary things. But sometimes it's little things you do. And if you're interested in doing little things or big things, you can go to cscadvocate.org and learn kind of first steps in what you can do to help those causes. And just gonna give a minute to see if there are any questions. But if not, I'm going to.
And all of the links that Kelly mentioned, we will make sure that, well, the link to the PDF file, we will include that in the video recording. And if you have any additional questions that were not answered today, you can feel free to private message us through the Gilda's Club Facebook page. You can chat them into the video live stream, or you can even reach out to Kelly directly at kcraft@gildasclubqc.org. That's KCRAFT at GILDACS. When you're spelling it, it's really hard to do out loud. Kelly Craft. So kcraft@gildasclubqc.org. KCRAFT@GILDASCLUBQC.org. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. And thank you everyone for joining in. And if you have any questions, email or call us. Thanks so much.